Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Historical Humans podcast. My name is Justin Woods, and I'm joined today by my fellow co-hosts Colum, Coleman, and Aaron Gilpin. And today we are going down to Central America and parts of Mexico, where we are looking at the Mayan City States.
Wait, are those the people who had that calendar and said that in 2012 we were all gonna die?
I mean, they may not have been wrong. I think the timelines just diverged. But
Don't go
yes,
down that rabbit
exactly.
hole. Don't go
Uh,
down that rabbit hole.
Another one of Justin's
we,
suggestions managed to proliferate.
yeah. Uh, yeah. Anyway, they did have the Mayan calendar, and we will discuss that and 2012 in a little bit here. But first, we're going to do a little overview of the Mayans and their cities. Uh, so the Mayan history, for the most part, as an independent civilization, can be divided up into two major periods. What is known as the Classical Maya, which lasted from 250 to 900 CE. During this time, cities in the Mayan lowlands are very prominent and very powerful. They are sort of the powerhouse of the Mayans. And then there is the post classical Maya, which is 900 to 1519 CE. Very precise drop off date for that one.
Hey, I wonder what happened then.
Yeah. Se hablo español.
Oh,
Uh, and during this time, it is the highland Mayan cities that are most prominent. So these are ones that are, I believe, a little bit further inland and also just way up there in elevation in terms of in terms of where the cities are located. And the reason for this power shift at about the 900 CE mark is right around that time, there is a period of prolonged drought and warfare, likely caused by the prolonged drought. Um, Basically, everyone in the lowlands started running out of water.
oh,
Uh, and when you rely on that for your natural, for both drinking water, you rely on the rain for drinking water and irrigation, and your religion involves bloodletting, well, let's just say things get pretty violent pretty quickly. We'll get, but don't worry, we'll get into all that good stuff later with the bloody violence of the Mayans. uh, they had during their heyday, they founded about 40 cities of between 5,000 and 50,000 people. Each of these cities ruled its own territory. We can we'll dive into that some too, but like there's a lot of teeing up for a lot of subjects we're going to deal with later.
it's interesting to me that they took up a city-state kind of system. I don't
I
know,
mean,
like
that happens quite a bit when there's very little unified bodies or unified polities. A lot of times you'll see the independent city states pop up in whatever microcosm it is. The downside is a lot of times the unifying factor is usually a sword.
yeah, I mean like because like when I think of the city-states, I always think of like Greece and early Mesopotamia with like Ur and Uruk,
Yeah.
places like that. So I just I don't know. I always think they're more fun because but a lot it's because they're a lot more messy. Like they don't. It's hard to paint a clear, unified picture that everybody loves. So like I like that. I like it's messy. It makes it much more fun.
Yeah, well, like the Mesopotamians or the classical Greeks or even the Renaissance Italians, the Mayans were bound together by a few shared things and really had distinct politics and identities from one another. They all acknowledged that they were Mayan culturally. They all played the same sacred ball game, worshipped more or less the same gods, and followed the same calendar. But beyond that, uh, you were Chichen Itza, I'm Tikal. We don't get along.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I do think Tikal is better, but that's
yeah.
just me.
Uh, this
That's just to call it propaganda. You're believing
yeah,
Tenoch.
Palenque for
Tenochtitlan isn't even a part of the Mayan
I know. I
Empire.
stopped myself midway. I was like, I was gonna go. I was trying to say Chichen Itza, but earlier before we were recording, we were talking about the Aztecs.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
That's what I'm
yeah,
saying.
yeah. Yeah. Palenque would like to have a word with you now.
Fuck Palenque.
No, Palenque is actually pretty funny. But yeah, the Mayans had an estimated total population of between 2 million and 10 million people. That is the like estimate for like their contiguous population at like any one time. There are points in history where like a single city will rule over almost 2 million people by itself. And then there are other points where a city is lucky to rule over 100,000. They really fluctuate in terms of prosperity and power here.
Yeah,
So,
well, especially
Jeez.
because a lot of people may not understand this because they do very much think of the Aztecs and the Mayans specifically when it comes to this part of the world. However, it is very much a it's a very contentious area. There are other groups at play, and there's a lot of other factors like drought and
mhm,
wet seasons really come into play.
yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, and like with that, like the Mayan territory, such as it was, where all this is going to be occurring, is what we now understand today as Belize, Guatemala, Honduras, and a few of the southernmost provinces of Mexico.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot. They're centered around what is known as the Yucatan Peninsula, which is this jut of land out where Belize is. That's where most people think of the Mayans as being. That's where we have some of the most well recovered cities and ruins, but they were kind of a little bit of everywhere.
Well, and you want to know what's crazy, and probably my favorite thing about this group
Yeah,
is every single one of those cities. You look at it, and do you know what it mimics?
I
Hmm.
have a feeling you're going to tell us, and I'm not going to like it.
Actually, you might. It mimics the human brain when mapped out when neurons are firing, because every single city is like one of those neurons firing, and they're all interconnected through a web of roads and bridges that help you transport through the jungle. So there have been some really really great lidar maps, and I think we may have covered a few of them that show these massive networks of roadways and bridges that traverse the jungle. Because let's not forget that the Yucatan Peninsula and most of Belize are rainforest.
It,
Very, very dense rainforest.
not just dense rainforest, but especially as you get into Honduras, mountainous rainforest.
And
Oh, yeah.
so there's a couple of other cool things beyond just LiDAR, because LiDAR has really cracked this shell open in finding these cities, because a lot of them were just completely reburied.
Mhm.
Um, I know
The
Chichen
jungle took
Itza.
it back.
Well, and that's the truth. But
No, yeah.
one,
Palenque was discovered by accident by a gardener.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
my favorite thing. It's my
Um,
favorite thing that happens.
it's just it's crazy, and one of the other cool things that I find about these cities is not only do they use lidar to find them. Do you know what's another way they can actually spot where some of these cities lay?
Topography.
No, the color of the trees.
Oh, right. They do. All right. The trees turn. Yeah, stupid.
Because
Yeah, there's certain materials in the soil. Can't it affect that?
that's not quite it. No, what they actually did was hack and slash agriculture. So when they would farm a piece of land, they would cut everything down, burn it in a pit, and then they would farm that land until it was no longer fertile. What that means in the modern day is when you look at aerial imagery or you look at it from a plane, you can spot different patches of jungle are a different shade of green than the rest because they've regrown in that spot.
Yeah,
Oh, because the
the
soil is
jungle
not
is
as.
growing. It's growing out of depleted soil.
And it's the coolest thing in my mind. One of my undergrad professors was a Mayan archaeologist, so I have a lot of that additional weird fun facts. Again, This is
Same.
a Justin
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah. No. Same here. Same here.
We love the
Mine was
Mayans.
technically Incan, but like they did a lot of stuff with mine as well. Yeah. Yeah. So, back to your like neuron analogy.
Yeah.
There was a different one that I came up to explain the layout of these cities.
Okay.
Because the Mayans had a unique means of projecting power. Uh, with it, and basically what that meant is that they would lay out their cities in a series of rings, sort of wheels upon wheels. You start off with major cities encircled by smaller ones, like planets would be around the sun. Then each of these smaller cities are then themselves encircled by rings of towns, sort of like moons around a planet.
Oh.
So you effectively create, wheels on wheels, all of which interconnect in these little hexagon patterns. And basically, the bigger city that encircled you ruled everything that encircled it, and then you ruled everything that encircled you. And it's the levels of power, creating its own little hierarchy.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
It's Lion King. Everything you see is yours. You're just doing it from progressively lower and lower altitudes.
But that really is, and it's kind of interesting too, just how the network spread out and how it diverged.
Yeah,
I mean, all roads lead somewhere, right? Rome.
yeah, yeah. Everything has to go somewhere, and of the 40 cities, there are some worth knowing that we're going to talk about now. We're gonna talk about a few of them in detail, but just a list of names if you're interested in this and you want to look at some very unique settlements with their own like mini empires attached to them. So some of the most important major cities were Tikal,
Tikal,
uh, yeah,
Oaktun,
Uaxatun, yep,
Oaktun.
Uaxatun,
You
yep.
don't pronounce
Co-
the X in this. Do you want
I
me
am
to do
not.
this?
I will pronounce the X in everything.
Copan,
Uxmal is so fun to mispronounce. You cannot take that
Uxmal,
from me.
Uxmal,
Uxmal.
Mayapan,
Ux.
Chicha Itzin, Riobec, Palenque, Calakmul, Dos Pilas, Bonam. Oh, I don't know how to pronounce Bonampak.
Bonampak.
Yeah, that one's the
Bonampak.
one I can't do. But
Yeah.
Bonampak. Copan.
Copan, Copan,
On. On.
Oaktun,
I will not.
Oaktun.
I will not allow you to make me say things right. I will not allow. I will pronounce the letters like they're in English.
Yeah, but you pronounce phonetically letters that don't exist anymore.
I know it's hilarious.
Ugh.
I am a terrible person and should not be allowed to say anything that was not originally an English word.
And that's why I drink, friends.
No, it
Is
is
that
not.
why?
No, it is
I
not.
thought it was that or the crippling depression.
Don't bring that up here, man.
All right, so
Supposed
let's
to
talk
have
about
happy
Tikal.
vibes. Yeah.
Yeah, history's already depressing enough. Just go to therapy.
Okay,
Guys,
but
we're
tell
trying
me,
to make this fun. We're
tell
trying
me
to make
most
history
historians
fun.
aren't depressed alcoholics at this point.
Are you kidding me? Have you met them?
Yes.
Only the British ones.
No, the American archaeologists also drink bars dry. I've been to a couple of SAAs, and it's like fish in water.
Yeah, tell me about it. I found out.
All right, Tikal, let's go to the most
Uh,
dominant Mayan city.
Yeah. Yeah. So Tikal was one of the most dominant of the Mayan cities. It is a powerful classical Mayan city. Um, it had a population of about 120,000 people at its height. And what makes Tikal significant is, first of all, it was ruled by a single dynastic line for 800 years, with
Home.
yeah, with 39 successive rulers. For context, the Roman Empire goes through 3 dynastic lines in about 200 years.
Okay, like I don't mean I kind of have to.
Relate it to Rome. Relate it to
No,
Rome.
I'm
That is
actually
the
gonna
point
relate
of.
it to something else. Funny
Go
enough.
for it.
Oh no.
Okay, so like I know. So they say continuous rule, right?
Yeah.
Are we sure that's not propaganda? Because like I think of like the Egyptians and how long they lasted. Like dynasties like 19 and 20, they're technically not that long.
Yeah.
How like is this like is there
Well,
any
no,
like
it's a single dynastic line.
is that
So
so that's
it's
It's a
parents,
single line.
children, nieces,
Nephew.
or
Nephew.
uncles, nephews.
Basically, it stayed in the family the entire time.
And the
Now,
fact that they didn't go the Habsburg route during that time is also very impressive.
yeah, I have
right?
absolutely no guarantee of that, but let's make the assumption. For the
Like
love
that's
of
Look,
God, let's make the
yeah,
assumption.
that's one assumption I'm happy to make. Let's be real.
yeah, though, like that's why I was curious because like that just
Yeah,
is
but
astounding.
Their family
yeah,
tree is a family
I know
loop.
it is an extremely long lasting dynasty. 39 rulers, 800 years. They're averaging about a what would that be? 20-year reign?
Yeah, something of the sort.
Roughly.
Yeah. Yeah, about 40, yeah, a little over 20 years, yeah. Which is it's very good. This is a very stable dynasty and subsequently it's a very prosperous city. Uh which brings us to the which is probably what allowed them to build what is the second reason Tikal is so important, especially to us historically, and that is that it is home to what is actually the largest um, pre-Columbian Mayan structure, and some sources even said it was the largest pre-Columbian structure in the Western Hemisphere. But I'm not sure if I believe that. At 212 feet tall, the temple in Tikal is the largest temple of the entire Mayan world.
That's just really cool. It's just cool. I like mega structures. They're
Yeah,
cool.
it's
Megalithic structures are incredible.
yeah,
I
it
love
is.
megalithic structures.
And if you look at Tikal, especially if you compare it to another city we're going to look at in a minute, Chichen Itza, um,
So
T- Tikal's pyramid is incredibly elongated. It is tall and narrow.
and the other thing I love about the pyramid itself is you might be sitting there at home thinking, how the hell was this city lost if there's a massive pyramid? Well, a lot of times the slopes and the sides of it actually slump and they reconstruct it, like in Chichen Itza, completely
Yep.
rebuilt.
How do you lose a whole building?
Well, when the
You forget to love it and cherish it.
well, and that's really the truth because once it went into disrepair, thanks to the Spanish. Once the Spanish came and did their thing, it fell into disrepair and it just looked like another hill. Remember how you mentioned mountainous
Yeah,
jungle environment.
yeah. And the other thing too is also remember Tikal is a classical Mayan city where at the height of its power. Um, Tikal kind of fades from significance a few hundred years prior to the Spanish, and people from the territory that Tikal traditionally ruled actually emigrate to Chichen Itza and found the city later on.
Oh,
So it's like Tikal is one of those ones where like it was already falling by the wayside before the Spanish came and put a stop in everything.
Yeah, but still,
So
fuck the
like
Spanish.
it's yeah, it's pretty easily lost. Don't worry, we'll get to blame the Spanish for a couple of the other cities we talk about. Uh, yep. Uh, the next one that we're going to talk about a little bit is Calukmo. Uh,
Kalakmul.
now,
Kalakmul.
now this one is fun because the city center, the actual city, never really exceeded about 50,000 people, but was able to project its power so effectively that it ruled an empire of 1.75 million.
That's awesome. That's massive projection.
The other Mayan city states referred to it as the Kingdom of the Serpent, or the kingdom of the snake, because
Snakes.
the emblem of the city was a serpent. And it appears to have been widely feared by the other polities during its time.
Oh wow.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
if you're projecting power over 1.75 million people, you don't want to
yeah.
fuck with them.
The the in theory, at its height, Kalukmo could probably have organized or mobilized more able-bodied warriors than the entire population of most of its rivals.
I mean, that makes sense. Yeah, like
Yeah, yeah, it's like one massive army. Um, it is home to one of the largest Mayan pyramids. Not quite second largest, but definitely up there. This is one of the more extremely large ones at 148 feet. Most Mayan pyramids are under 100 feet tall, with the average being, I think, around 60 or 70 feet. Uh, However, most Mayan pyramids are also in smaller cities
yeah.
without as much like imperialistic resources as these big fellows that we're talking about here. You know, there's something like 40 like kingdoms of the Maya over the course of about 1,300 years. So, a little grain of salt with the averages there as we bring them up. Yeah. The next city, Justin, do you want to take this because it has an X?
Uxmal. Uxmal.
Aha!
Uxmal.
You almost did it my way.
Yes, Uxmal.
Uxmal.
Which is post-classical Mayan city on the Yucatan, which is home to my favorite pyramid, the Pyramid of the Magician, which is an oval-shaped pyramid.
The
Yeah.
magician?
It is.
The Magician.
Yeah. The Pyramid of the Magician is considered extremely unique in terms of Mayan architecture. Almost all Mayan pyramids are stepped pyramids, which this one also is, that consist of square or rectangular platforms stacked on top of each other.
Interesting.
This one is cylindrical.
The Holy Cylinder.
It is the only one to be rounded. It is unclear to us here at Historical Humans why they did that. Uxmal was a relative blip of a city in terms of its power in the Mayan world. It really only reigned from about 800 to 1000 CE as a like force to be reckoned with. But in that time, it is sort of the transition into the post-classical Mayan pyramid, and clearly Uxmal represents a sort of experimentation in the Mayan religion and in architecture and society, trying to generally solve the locally apocalyptic conditions in which they lived.
Yeah, that's fair.
Happens to the best of us.
You know, you know, if God controls rain and you're in a massive drought, you need to find a new way to talk to God.
Do you think we pissed him off somehow? Like, did we not sacrifice enough?
Have you tried? Have you tried? Have you tried calling Allstate?
The interesting thing too, and I'm sure this doesn't cover it because you're focusing on city states. The Mayans did actually practice forms of sacrifice in what they call cenotes.
Yeah,
And
we don't talk about cenotes, but we do talk about the human sacrifice.
okay, well then I will touch back on the cenotes when we talk about that.
Yeah, the Mayan the Mayan religion does come up later as part of the city states, sort of like, because we're talking about these different city states, and we're going to talk about what unifies them, like what makes all these cities Mayan.
They didn't kick someone off the mountain like the Aztecs did.
Yeah.
They did what
Yeah.
now?
The Aztecs would rip out the beating heart, place it on an altar, and then kick the lifeless body down the pyramid.
Oh, when you said mountain, I was that's what got me confused. I was like, hold on, wait, what?
Oh no, that's much too quick for the Mayans. That's much too quick.
I don't like that.
Yeah, no, we'll be talking about that when we talk about what makes all these cities, which are not really contemporaneous to each other and definitely did not get along, Mayan. We will be talking about the extreme violence. So if that suits your interest, stick with us. We'll get there soon.
Hmm.
Uh, After Uxmal, we come to Chichen Itza, which was a diverse and multicultural Mayan city of the northern Maya lowlands. It held power from the 9th to 13th centuries. Uh, the original Chichen Itza had been a minor city that was abandoned in the 5th century CE and left for the jungle to reclaim. However, it was re inhabited by the Itza people of Tikal in the 9th and 10th centuries, uh, during which time they rebuilt the city and made it its own glorious powerhouse in its own right. They established what is known as El Castillo, which is Spanish for the castle, which is a 98-foot tall Mayan pyramid. This pyramid has been fully reconstructed and is a major tourist attraction today. I believe Justin, you touched on it a little bit earlier with it being completely rebuilt, but it is the classic image of what a Mayan temple looks like.
Yeah, and it also happened with the Aztecs, and maybe the Aztecs were more prolific, but Chichen Itza had to be excavated, and a lot of the stepped parts of the pyramid had slumped after all the years. So in the 1920s, I think it was, especially at Chichen Itza, a very entrepreneurial historian decided to rebuild it in what he believed his image of the pyramids would have looked like. Historically speaking, we don't really know how accurate it is. We think it's pretty accurate, but it is a more modern recreation versus the historical structure.
Yeah, the lot of the issues surrounding the reconstruction of Chichen Itza stem from the fact that it was a city in major decline for about 200 some years before the Spanish showed up and made sure it stayed in decline. At which point, it's another 300 years before anyone tries to seriously investigate the site.
And
So
they didn't
you've got half a
investigate it.
millennia of neglect.
And they didn't like investigate it in an academic sense. They just built it back together so they can get tourists.
For
And
funsies.
and I don't I think one of these sites, I can't remember which one off the top of my head because unfortunately I don't have that memorized. But one of them has a beautiful, beautiful Spanish mission cathedral on the top of it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because
I don't think that's one we're going to be talking about today. But yeah, I do know what you're talking about.
the Spanish loved to. One of the ways they converted people was by taking what they already viewed as being sacred or religious and smacking a beautiful cathedral right on top of it.
Yeah, that's pretty Catholic.
Yeah.
That's how all the Pillar of Trajan, and then there's the Pillar of Hadrian. Those that's how they say it. They just stuck a statue of a saint on top and said, "Go to it's now Christianized."
Yeah, oh no, it's the Christian exterior decorator.
Yeah,
We
like,
took this boring old pyramid and we modernized it. Has the really cheap cutaway with the star flying across, and then you just
yep.
see the Spanish church just plopped right on top.
It's now all about Jesus. And they totally didn't do anything bad after that. They totally
They became friends and sang kumbaya stories to each other.
Yeah, yeah. I think you might be thinking about Justin. Like the name that comes to mind is the Pyramid of Cholula, which yes is an actual place and also a hot sauce, I believe.
Yeah, well, the sauce is named after the region.
Yeah,
Um,
but yeah, I don't know if that's a Mayan one or if that happened to be an Aztec one. I think it's in Mexico, but I could be wrong. You know. Anyway,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Either way, the Spanish like to reinterpret sites and add their own flair to it.
Yeah, yeah. And that's That's going to bring us uh, to the fifth and final city that we're going to be looking at directly here with the city states, and that is going to be Palenque.
Palenque.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Now, this is a classical Mayan city, and it's also one of the largest. It encompassed 50 square miles. For comparison, Chichen Itza only ever covered 4. So it is a massive urban center.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Uh, it is also home to the Temple of the Inscriptions, which is a 75-foot tall pyramid that is dedicated to and served as the tomb of Pikal, king of Palenque, also known as Pikal the First. Um, in analogy to Western history, and not to understate this man's significance at all, Pikal the First is known as the Charlemagne of Mesoamerica.
I mean, I know that's an honor, but is that really an honor?
Yeah. Well, to be fair, there is some similarities between the accomplishments of Charlemagne and Pikal. Charlemagne, for those who don't know, effectively unified via religious conversions and military conquests Italy, Switzerland, the Germanic states, and France
Yeah.
into a single empire. Uh, Pikal, when he becomes king of Palenque, Palenque is a city under siege. Uh, and by the end of his reign, it is the most preeminent city of the Mayan city states with the most prosperous empire among them. So basically, he takes it from being on the verge of collapse to being a major power within the Mayan world.
That's really impressive. I mean,
Yeah.
conquest wise, I guess, but
You gotta give it to him. From being on the brink to being on the edge, like that's a good comeback.
Yeah.
but like, but like,
Yeah.
what? How? So like, what's the size of the territory you think? Like,
I mean, they covered a vast swath of Mesoamerica, from the
Yeah.
Yucatan all the way to the southern mountains of Honduras. You're talking a few 100-mile square
that's
radius. Like it's a pretty sizable chunk. Like they're not small cities.
and that's all jungle too.
It's dense jungle, not just jungle. It's dense mountainous jungle, and like I
Honestly,
said, they had roads and interconnecting bridges all throughout the network.
the level of maintenance that they must
You
have been had to
you
use
think
to
the
like keep the
Romans are absolute genius engineers for building their roads all across Europe? You should see the Mayan roads. I believe there's actually a term for the road.
I'm sure there is. I just know
Sock
even
Bay.
today, even today, like I could not imagine trying to go through on foot through Central American jungles. But they lived there and they were able to do it. Like it's impressive. It's just so impressive to me.
Yeah, they are referred to as sock bays.
Sock
Yeah.
bays. Okay. I don't know. Like it.
One of
How can you say how can you say like nothing like they did was impressive or something like like, shit like that.
no, they did a lot of impressive things, and one of the reasons, in addition to his reign of conquest and uh, you know effective glorification of his city state into an empire, um, he also because his tomb is effectively under uh, the pyramid of inscriptions, uh, he his body has effectively guarded some of the last surviving Mayan writings because the Spanish destroyed anything they could find uh, when they got to the region.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So the simple fact of his tomb being where it is and our ability to thus find it means that he's one of the few individuals whose legacy includes giving us the Mayan writing system.
It doesn't take much to save
Yeah.
a culture or a religion. A lot of times it's very small things like that, and the sad part is, as archaeologists, you realize that you're looking at a microcosm of what is their culture. You're looking through the tiniest little lens trying to discern the rest of it because of that.
And it's just
The
and
the
you just get the material remains,
the
and not everything material.
Mayans had a written language, but we have no evidence of it because of the Spanish.
And
Yep.
just in case anyone's like getting confused with like the hieroglyphs, I'm sure it's the same concept as like the pyramid. Like the Egyptians had hieroglyphs, but they actually had a written script that wasn't
Yeah.
hieroglyphs. It's like a Kemetic or something like that.
Coptic. The
Coptic.
Egyptians wrote the Egyptians wrote letters in Coptic, and they inscribed a lot of their religious art in hieroglyphs, which were themselves a form of writing, but were not writing
They were
as
pictographic.
yeah
This is a
as
syllabary.
yeah as those of us with alphabetic languages would think of writing.
Well, we think of the syllabary language because everyone descends from the Greek alphabet, roughly,
Yeah.
unless you're Cyrillic.
I was going for alphabetic, but sure, let's. I don't want to talk about the Cyrillics. Okay, we're not here to deal with Indo-European linguistic issues.
Look, the fact you even got me talking about linguistics should be depressing enough.
Why is everything depressed? Justin, stop drinking whatever it is you're drinking and just focus on
No,
the task at hand.
it's just linguistics in general.
Enough
Linguistics in general.
negativity.
You know my hatred of
Language is
linguistics.
fascinating. Everyone uses it.
Just
End of discussion.
don't study linguistics.
I'm not. I'm not. I'm just. All right. All right. So now back to the Mayans. We're gonna talk about a few of the things that made them Mayan. For one thing, their religion, which was centered around astronomy and mathematics. They had a whole complex cycle of rituals based on the position of the Earth, the Moon, and Venus. Because Venus was one of the few distinct celestial bodies you could see in the sky, and they were that good at astronomy that they had already kind of figured out what it was.
Not just figured out what it was, they were able to map it out, and they were able to take their knowledge of the solar system, the moon, the sun, and the Venus cycles, and they managed to basically dissect it into a pretty accurate lunar calendar.
Yep. Yeah, they incorporated all these rituals into their calendar system, which is in a weird way two separate calendars. Uh
Yeah.
the first is the accurate solar year, which is 18 months of 20 days with an additional 5 days at the end of the year that were considered unlucky or taboo by the Mayans, as in those are days that's the week you don't do anything because bad shit happens.
The extra days, the leftovers.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting the way they boiled that down.
Yeah, because everything had to be symmetrical, which means
Well,
you've got all these 20s, then you got 5 left over.
well, and the funny thing about that, well, there's two things with that. One, they count in a base 20 system,
Yep.
which it all ties together. You start realizing how much culture is inspired by language and vice versa. Again, you got me on linguistics. Um, and then two, it's interesting to me that it is 365 days that they have accurately mapped out.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and then moving alongside this parallel to it uh, is the sacred calendar, which is 260 days, consisting of 13 cycles of 20 days, again with that base 20 system, meaning that rituals would happen on different days of the solar year, but still be the same ritual.
Hmm.
It's a little bit like how was it I believe Easter isn't necessarily celebrated on the exact same solar date every year.
But it's
Uh,
always a Sunday.
it's always there's other rules governing Easter than was governing the Mayan rituals here, but it's that sort of concept of like you know unlike say Christmas or Hanukkah or something like that, where it is it will always be these dates in December. The Mayan rituals flow around the solar calendar because all that matters for the rituals is that they repeat in their cycle, following their celestial bodies.
Yeah.
The solar calendar is just how the Earth works. The religious calendar is we are tracking everything that is not us and mapping it out.
Neat. And then the next part is the interesting part, which people are probably most familiar with when referring to the Mayan calendar, and this is the long count, which is a continuous marking of time that began in the year, or it started in 3113 BCE, and they're traditionally designed to last over 5,000 years in one cycle. But the and that's where I think the 2012 jokes always came in about the Mayan calendar ending, is because that was directly at the end of a long count. However, the Mayan calendars, because everything is cyclical, it starts back over right at the beginning.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is one cycle of we can track and predict all celestial bodies within a 5,000 year range.
Which is
Uh,
insane.
before this complex set of machinery resets back to zero and then starts over again. That is how complex the universe around us is, and thus how complex this calendar is, that they were able to map out a set pattern that would only repeat once every 5 millennia.
But the end of it, that's the end of the world. Oh wait, no, the calendar just
No,
flipped back over.
yeah, no, no, it's just suddenly January again, and
Oh,
we begin anew.
Not again.
Yeah,
January's like the worst month.
yeah. Now, a big part of this religion and their calendar was the ability to accurately predict solar eclipses, which, for most civilizations at the time of the classical Maya, meant panic, the world is ending, not, hey, we get to have a party.
But when you know when they're gonna happen, you can plan quite the festival and the feast.
Not to mention, you also know what they are and about how long they last. Eclipses do not last long, people. They are not a reason for concern.
I'm excited I'll get to see the total solar eclipse this year. It's
Oh,
going through the northeast.
Yeah, I'm gonna
yay.
it's gonna over here, it's gonna be in the southern part of the state.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go with a friend to go see it.
And I will not be witnessing the monster eating the sun and ending the world. Thank you very much.
Ah,
Oh,
come on.
no.
How many times do you
You're
even get
gonna
to
be-
see
You're
it?
gonna be in your cave shouting curses at the sky.
I'm too far north, everybody. I'm not going
God
down.
damn it! Robert's supposed to go keep Apophis away from the sun. And
Yeah, I'm too far north. Um, another key thing is that in order to manage this entire calendar, the Mayans had to invent a mathematical concept that was completely unknown to the rest of the world. They had to invent the number zero.
It's like one, but less.
Yeah. For
but
all,
less is none.
yeah.
What?
Yeah. For all of society, there was no mathematical concept of zero. The number did not exist. You simply either had one fish or you had no fish. And when you
a
are
blue fish or a
doing,
red fish?
yeah, yeah, precisely. And when you're doing math, things that aren't numbers, especially when you're doing math on a scale of 5,000 years, non-numbers do not work.
You know, it makes so much more sense why all of these complex mathematical principles were figured out way back then in like ancient Greece and pre-ancient Greece. Because if they didn't have to deal with zero, then they're good. X hasn't even entered the picture by this point.
Yeah. Yeah, no. The Greeks are over figuring out decimals, and the Mayans are like, we're just gonna use zero. and work our way
Oh
out
my
from
God.
there.
It's like the comparison between German engineering and American. It's like, how do we get here? The Greeks are just doing all the numbers and crunching. Well, if it's mathematically more than none, but less than one, then let's look at how many different fractions we can be in the Mayans just walk over and just do a giant zero.
Yeah. Yeah. The Greeks were obsessed with like division and halving, specifically. Whereas the Mayans, little more practical, little less philosophical in terms of, in terms of their numerical inventions. Yeah. Like you want to make fun of the Greeks. There is a Greek philosophical concept that says you could never get anywhere because every time you try to go somewhere, you have the distance to it, and then you have that distance, but you can't have your way to perfect nothingness.
So the sad thing is that's actually a really practical tool in our field, believe it or not, with measuring coastlines. It's the
Yeah.
coastline paradox.
Yeah.
The smaller increments you measure a coastline, the longer it gets because the more intricacies, and it basically is the same principle of like if you have the measure your distance that you're measuring, it just keeps
Yeah.
multiplying.
Yeah. Yeah. It gets absurdly long. Uh and like that is a Greek principle. We have the Greeks to thank for that. Uh we also
It's all
have
Greek
the
to me.
Yeah, we also have their lack of the Mayan concept of zero to thank for that because there's no number for nothing. How do we make a number that is nothing?
We have it.
We have the technology.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the
Oh no,
Mayans.
they're quite literally cutting the computer in half.
We can rebuild him.
Yeah.
Make him bigger.
We have
Stronger.
the technology.
Yeah, the Mayans, like 600 years after the Greeks, going, what the hell are these idiots talking about? Here's the number zero.
We need a symbol for it. You know when you have a number that's not quite one, you know, you have a fish or you have no fish, and they're all just sitting there like wide mouth, like, oh. And he's like, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
We have completely revolutionized math.
Yeah,
Oh
it's
no,
like,
we're talking
it
about
hurts.
like it's pitched in a boardroom of some corporation. Some guy's coming in frantically trying to pitch zero.
Yeah. All the all the Mayans just traditional garb around in like a modern boardroom.
Yes, exactly.
That's good. All right, that's good. I'm gonna take us to the second culturally unifying factor of the Mayans, which is their sacred ball game, which I swear it's spelled Ulama, and I hate it because I
You
know
llama.
Ooh, llama.
that's not what it says.
You
Which
llama.
is kind of cool. It's a ball game that many Mayan cities had. Pretty much every city that they uncover has these ball courts, which have three walls that are on pretty much like 45-degree angles. They have hoops up top, and then there's the playing surface. And the aim of the game was to kick a ball, a rubber ball, through the hoop using pretty much any part except for your hands. And the ball itself was like 3 to 5 kilograms. So it was heavy. It was a
Yeah.
very brutal
Oh,
sport.
oh, it's not just heavy. That's 3 to 5 kilos of solid rubber. This was made from rubber trees. It is solid rubber.
I
If
know
you
there
ever
are
picked
rubber
up a
trees.
tire, solid rubber, everything hurts.
Oh God! How do their ankles not get destroyed?
Oh my
Oh,
God,
you don't
it's
kick
like
it. You don't kick it. You got to hit it with anything but your hands. So your hips, your thighs were the primary means of moving it around.
they would also kick it though, which is partially
Yeah.
why the region also took to soccer.
Shakira would
really
have
easily.
loved it then.
Oh baby, when you talk like that. Yeah. So it was a
Hips
game
don't
that
lie.
unified
Wait,
a
what's
lot
that?
of
Shakira,
people.
Beyonce. Who says hips? Their
Uh,
hips don't lie.
That,
I don't know.
that's
Copyright
Shakira.
aside.
It's Shakira. But anyways, this ball game is also the same one that was played by the Aztecs and other Mesoamerican cultures, and it's originally believed to have been invented and originated with the Olmecs. Which the
Yeah.
Olmecs, if you didn't know, had those giant carved heads that would eventually get carved into thrones of the next ruler. Your
Yeah.
throne would be carved out of the previous ruler's head.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty fun there. One of the things also with this being originally an Olmec game, means that we can actually trace the Mesoamerican ball game that the Mayans played back about 3,500 years, making it
Oh,
the oldest known organized sport.
it's
That's right. The Mayans the Mesoamericans invented sports ball.
good for them. And you can actually
Yeah, sports
see
ball.
you can see the dissemination of this culture too, which is so phenomenal. To the point where in Arizona, there are ball courts that have been found because there's a lot of inner Mesoamerican trade that happened through Arizona, and to the point where a lot of tribes in North America also played a game that was kind of similar. They got rid of the large ball and ended up using sticks and nets, which eventually became lacrosse.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, my favorite part about lacrosse, though, if you want weird sports facts from the Americas, is lacrosse could also be used as a weapon of warfare by smoking beehives, putting them in the lacrosse net, and throwing them at your enemies.
I mean, this ball game that the Mayans played were also done by warriors. It was a way to coordinate and strategize. It
Yeah.
was a lot of times these games originate from militarized practices.
to be
Although,
fair,
al-
if you're having fun at competitions and kind of getting glory that way, what's
Mhm.
the need for war?
Oh, you want to talk about
oh,
glory?
oh, oh, God,
A lot of these
we are,
games, Aaron, actually
yeah.
ended in sacrifice.
Yeah, a lot of them. And a fun fact for you, Justin. One of the interesting things I noticed is that we don't really know how the Mayans played it, but the the idea of team play appears to have been more of an Aztec thing. The Mayan version looks a little bit more like single or two-player teams, meaning it's a lot of 1v1s.
1v1 me, bro. In the
But
court. Let's go, bro.
and Aaron, the beautiful part is they get the loser gets sacrificed at the end.
Yeah.
There wasn't non-fatal gameplay until
You won't
very late
you
on.
won't bro, you won't 1v1 me in this shit.
It's
One
like
of
the cross between a duel and like a 1v1 in basketball. Like
yeah,
Oh, High School Musical, but instead of
yeah.
playing basketball, Troy plays this.
Yeah. This game is basically basketball meets soccer, and we all die at the end.
I love this concept.
Uh, something was it something a little bit scary the more you think about this. The Mayans are credited with the first use of rubber for making the balls for this game, which begs the question, what the hell were other people using that a 5 kilo rubber ball was an improvement?
we
A
have
rock.
stone. Yeah, we have rock.
I
Rock.
think people are
It's
dying during the game prior to the Mayans.
they just
The-
like throw it a little too hard or
Oh,
whatever.
Oh, you killed Doc. How can't you kill Doc?
yeah,
Kill Doc with rock.
yeah, it
But
is.
speaking of torture and sacrifice, a lot of Mayan rituals involve torture and human sacrifice. And
Oh
a
yeah,
lot of these acts were thought to guarantee fertility and maintain the cosmic balance.
yep. Aaron, remember earlier when I said ripping out someone's heart and showing it to them was way too quick for the Mayans?
Yeah.
Oh
This is
boy.
that. The Aztec did ritual sacrifice. The Mayans did ritual torture.
The peaceful way to go is in the cenote, where they bind your hands and feet and weigh you down and then toss you in alive.
Yeah,
And you get to drown to death
So
because most of them are
cenotes are the
sinkholes.
holes in the ground. Yeah, those
yeah,
big
yeah,
holes
yeah,
in the cat.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah. Gateways to Zabulba, the underworld.
Which is a really fun and disturbing fact is you can actually go swimming in a lot of these cenotes nowadays. A lot of
Listen,
people who have
It's
on.
I
like
have
going to have picnics in cemeteries.
I have water from a cenote. One of my professors when I was an undergrad was excavating out there, and I made a bargain with them to bring me back some water from the portals to Zabulba.
Which the cenotes were believed to have ritual healing powers.
It will either kill me or grant me immortality once I drink it. I'm too chicken to do so.
Give it to me. I'll
One way to
chug
find
it.
out.
But yeah, they would adorn people with a lot of jewelry, a lot of gold. So the Spanish, when they found out, went diving. Fun fact.
Of course they did.
Yeah, well,
Spanish, also notoriously terrible swimmers during this time period.
Yeah.
What do you mean I shouldn't go swimming with my armor? What else? How am I going to be protected from the fish people?
Oh no. Jorge, you spent too much time at the sea. But yeah,
Right.
they would chuck people into the cenotes. They would do a lot of bloodletting, both willingly and unwillingly, where
Yeah.
drawing blood was deemed necessary to commune with the gods and to gain their favor. They were all effectively vampires.
Yeah. The gods, according to Mayan cosmology, were nourished on human blood, where the Greeks had a mythical substance called ambrosia. The Mayans said, "Yeah, no, they feed on the blood of men. We want to make this as painful for ourselves as possible."
Because pain is love, and love is love.
Hold on, wait a minute. I spent enough time in therapy to know that's not true.
Now,
Aaron, sometimes self harm can be good if you're doing it for the god's
Hold on.
favor.
Hold
now,
no.
now, the Mayan nobility, because of this, had a strong incentive for warfare because since the nobility, specifically the ruling class, were the intermediaries between the gods and the Mayan people, if they did not have prisoners to sacrifice, they themselves had to mutilate their own bodies in
Told you.
regularly scheduled rituals to appease the gods. Thus, you don't have to hurt yourself if you've kidnapped someone from a rival city and can sacrifice his noble blood instead.
And I also want to highlight the fact that it is usually the nobility who are being tortured, which I'm not saying I agree with, but I get it.
My right to rule comes from my willingness to slice my own hand off repeatedly.
You know, if members in Congress had to do that, I bet you shit would get done.
I bet you the incumbency rate would go way down.
I mean,
half the
this
zombies
Jared,
are broke.
yeah, like this gerontocracy we've got going on. Is that really a bad thing?
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
And that does bring us back around to the fact that the Mayans were not a unified political entity. The cities often warred with each other, sometimes solely for the purpose of abducting each other's nobility. Because guess who's leading the army? The nobility.
Hey, we need to go steal their guy. Why? I'm not cutting myself this week.
Yeah. You almost wonder how at some point the two armies didn't get together and agree to just chuck each other's commanding officers into the other side. Why do we have to die for this?
See, that's where like the great use of propaganda comes in.
Propaganda? Isn't that what British people do when they're looking at something?
That's terrible.
That is a really bad one.
We're dealing with the Mayans and maybe the Spanish here. This is one of the few weeks where we have absolutely no reason to lambast the British, but here we are.
Hey, I have
We had to do it anyway.
The British Museum. We have not hit our quota.
Yeah. Don't worry, we're doing the Titanic next, folks. There's gonna be a lot of British bashing going on then.
And iceberg bashing, apparently.
Yay.
Did that one sink? Sorry, guys.
Yeah. But anyway, even though the Mayans shared a calendar and religious and cultural ceremonies, each of the city-states saw each other as distinct. They saw each other as rivals. And historically, the main differentiation was between the highland and lowland Mayans.
The northern and southern Mayans. We don't like the mountain yokels.
More like I was like, yeah, it's gonna be more of a. Definitely sounds like them hill folk are at it again.
It's like Appalachia versus the Northeast.
I wonder if they had cryptids.
It kind of was. The lowland Maya were for a long time more prosperous, but they were also more vulnerable to drought and warfare, being in the lowlands, where the only thing protecting them was jungles and not jungles and mountains. The highland Maya were really the post-classical Maya for the most part in terms of power, but they lived in the highlands. So when the droughts kind of killed off everybody else, they were what was left and could kind of rule undisputed. It's a really interesting back and forth of just how much these groups hated everyone else in their own group and each other.
Them lowland folk. We don't
Yeah,
like them around these parts.
yeah, no, it's the Spartans and the Athenians. It's a lot of things like that where it's like, we're both Greek, but if you could die right now, I would greatly appreciate it.
I have to be the superior Greek.
And then
yeah,
and then everyone who sided with the Spartans or the Athenians is looking at Sparta and Athens going, I'm only with you because I hate him more.
Yeah, it's kind of at that point for them. It's pick your poison.
So the funny and sad part about that analogy in particular is, I know we're talking Mayans, but that is exactly what happened with the Aztecs. Is one of the reasons the Spanish were able to have their conquest over the Aztecs, because they had actually lost a number of battles against them, was the fact that all the other neighboring tribes were like, yeah, the Aztecs are kind of dicks. Yeah, we'll fight them with you.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, the Mayans have gone so far into decline by the time the Spanish arrived that they don't really need to do that.
The Spanish just kind of wandered through. They're like, oh, hello.
Yeah.
Nice jobs you have.
Yeah. We're going to rule this place now, but we won't set foot in here for like another 100 years.
Yeah,
remember, it is in fact ours.
And Catholic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys know about Jesus yet? We're going to
we'll be back. We'll be back. Yeah.
We'll show you Jesus.
Yeah. And one of the things too is like a lot of these distinctions carry over to this day. There were in researching this, I came across 9 culturally distinct Mayan descendant communities. There are probably more. These are just the ones that were noticeable enough to get mentioned in some of the sources I found. So yeah, they yeah, there are a lot of them. If you want, Justin, we can go through and try and say each of them correctly. It's kind of
all right.
They're kind of fun.
All right. So we have the Yucatec Maya of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico believes in northern Guatemala. The Locandan, located on the Mexican-Guatemalan border. The Quichean-speaking Maya of the Guatemalan highlands. The Mamian of western Guatemala. Oh, this is where it's challenging.
It starts getting fun about halfway through.
Coan Jobalan of western Guatemala and southern Mexico. Tzlotzil. Oh, that's a hard one. Of Tizla of southern Mexico. Cholan of southern Mexico. And the Chorti of eastern Guatemala.
Yeah.
Well, I butchered at least 3 of those. If you know how I pronounce them wrong, please tell me how to pronounce them correctly. I don't speak Mayan very well anymore.
Yeah. Zutzil and Zeltal are just that's some of the most fun names I've seen in a while that like are reasonably pronounceable in English as hard as they are. Like, yeah.
Well, and the thing I like about Mayan specifically is a lot of times it's kind of phonetic how they're spelled.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to know how to combine the two, like the TZO. So Tzatzil is TZO TZIL. Tzatzil, 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 and Telta, Celta. It rolls together.
Yeah. Yeah, that is one of the plus sides of trying to read all these. We apologize if we said your name long, or if your Mayan descendant community was not on this list. Like I said, this is by no means a list of all of them. Just
it's
the ones
not definitive, and we do not make the justification or judgment.
Just the ones that were deemed noteworthy enough to receive mentions by some of the sources that we read. So if you have an issue with this, please take it up with something like Encyclopedia Britannica before you take it up with us.
Well, and I thought this topic would be an interesting one for us to cover, both because the Mayan are a very culturally unique and identifiable group. They spanned a wide, vast array of jungle land, as we mentioned a couple of times, and they spanned a long period of time because what was their total reign?
Uh,
Uh,
their
two
their
fifty to
total
nine
reign
hundred, nine
is
hundred to 1590.
yeah. So their total reign is approximately 1,300 years, give or take.
That's awesome. That's a huge amount of time, and that is so fundamental in
Mhm.
just Mesoamerica and even North America because there were trades from that region, and it's so cool seeing some of the research that's coming out. Like if you haven't looked into Mayan archaeology, it's probably one of the most burgeoning fields because of new technologies. Like I think it was just a year ago or so that they just completed a massive lidar study and found 117 uh 117 miles of roadway that had previously just been undiscovered, and it's like 130 feet wide. It's massive. These
Yeah,
were mega highways
yeah, yeah. It was meant for a lot. The Mayan roads were meant for mass transportation of goods and people.
for a disconnected group of polities to have that kind of cultural unison is it's incredible. Hats off.
One one of the interesting things with that, as to why everything is connected, even though they're all separate polities, is because, especially on the smaller town level, you could end up being claimed by two different people who would build roads to you. Because technically, a lot of the like hexagon points around different smaller cities would share a hexagon point with another small city that wasn't in the same sphere of
That's
influence.
awesome.
You know, so you could be the subsidiary of a city that was claimed by both, say, uh, Tikal and Palenque, and you'd kind of have to deal with that whenever the two came to blows.
Oh my God, taxes must have been awful.
You mean I have to pay this asshole and that asshole?
It's like, yeah, it's like welcome to going to both sides, telling them the other side is extorting you and starting a war.
Well, and the funny part is, I imagine it's like one person marches to town, they demand the rent, then they leave, and as they leave, the other group marches in.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, I wonder what those guys were doing here. Oh well.
Anyways, we're
yeah,
here to collect our rent.
yeah. Yeah, it kind of functioned like that. City state politics for the Mayans. Yeah, we've got a timeshare on this city.
Mom said it's my
Same
turn to
shit.
collect rent. Taxes. But that's a great point for us to wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed this topic. If you enjoyed it, please let us know down in the comment section below. And be sure to follow so you don't miss out on future episodes. And we'll see you in the next one.